capacity building and enhanced cooperation. ICAO's No Country Left Behind initiative is the basis for Session 5. It calls for strengthened cooperation and sharing of information and best practices between and among states and stakeholders, while enhancing capacity-building partnerships. The goal is to ensure that assistance programs and activities effectively address security issues and counter threats to civil aviation, so that all member states have access to the significant socio-economic benefits of safe, secure, and reliable air transport. To outline this concept, we are happy to welcome back Ms. Poppy Khoza, Director of the South African Civil Aviation Authority, and she will outline this concept for us. So, Poppy, nice to have you back. Et voilà.
Thank you very much, Masters of Ceremonies, fellow aviators, representatives from various states, ladies and gentlemen. Program Director, please allow me to first start by acknowledging the incredible work done by the organizers, not only in putting this massive event together, but also for identifying the core topics that are crucial to our industry in this era. Having listened to the discussions over the last 3 days, allow me to also say bravo to the various speakers for the informative and frank deliberations put to the fore. It is these types of conversations that will ensure that our industry is a yard ahead of those with less noble intent. The topic that I've been requested to share my thoughts on is capacity building and enhanced cooperation. It is indeed a topic that is very close to my heart, as I believe that we can only get better if we uplift each other. The gist of the theme also reminded me of a phrase used by people mostly located in the northern parts of South Africa, and the phrase, if loosely translated, says, "In the absence of cooperation, even the mightiest pride of lions cannot bring down an injured and limping buffalo." That, colleagues, in my view, sums up the required approach to the effective management of aviation security. Cooperation, cooperation, and more cooperation is what we require, nothing less. So what is it that can be summed up as a challenge? The one key thing that needs acknowledgement, and in my view, our special attention, is the fact that security threats and terrorist acts are never a bane of only one country or region. Those who want to harm our industry know this fact very well. They know that if country A's security is watertight, there could be another opportunity to harm the citizens of country A using weaknesses of country B. What I am saying is that security vulnerabilities can be transferred from one country to the next, or from one region to another. The current reality is that whilst there is some level of capacity building and cooperation, as well as the sharing of information on threats and best practices between states, there is still some countries and regions that are somehow left behind. What then are the generic inhibitors to capacity building and enhanced cooperation? Let me start by addressing issues of capacity building. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot overemphasize the importance of capacity building and the strengthening of cooperation and sharing of best practices in deterring terrorism and other threats to aviation security. Civil aviation remains an attractive target for terrorists, and terrorism has evolved to a point where we continually need to think ahead and work together on countering the next threat. At the same time, we are all acutely aware of how challenging and complicated our task is, keeping in mind the differing needs and capacity of each state. In most cases, some governments have other competing socio-economic priorities. Naturally, most of the resources are channeled to these priorities. This then leaves aviation security as a stepchild of a nation's priorities. Most of all, in certain instances, our leaders do not fully comprehend the complicated nature of aviation security. We need to make our leaders aware that aviation security has evolved to something more complex. There's intelligence information required, there's risk assessments to be conducted, skilled personnel required, and sophisticated technology and infrastructure to protect our borders and borders of the other countries we operate to. What shall we do then? Should those amongst us lacking capacity be left to fend for themselves, as if to say, each man for himself? The commonly used adage that reminds us that we are as strong as our weakest link is as true today as it was before. Because of the interconnectedness of the air transport system, aviation cannot be secured only at national level. We therefore need to ensure that security processes and procedures are globally and regionally harmonized, and that those who lack capacity are assisted to step up their game. We need to closely collaborate and cooperate to enhance the effectiveness of the security system in its entirety. Without ensuring that we adequately equip all states and security professionals, we cannot secure a value chain. It is well and good for one country or one region to have the best security in the world, but until the entire aviation system is secured, your citizens and your assets are not adequately secure. Program Director, the 39th Assembly of ICAO has also laid the foundation on which to build. We will continue to look upon ICAO in relation to their pivotal role in coordinating technical assistance and supporting states. The same applies to the development of an international aviation security capacity building framework. The role of member states to contribute financial and in-kind resources in support of aviation security enhancement is also important. In so doing, we will give effect to the No Country Left Behind initiative. ICAO should also continue to advocate for the prioritization of capacity building and cooperation among states. As of now, and in relation to capacity, the playing field is far from level. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to mention a few critical success factors that we think could be of assistance in capacity building. Firstly, planning. Until we start planning properly for capacity building initiatives, we will not address the real needs. Until capacity building is centralized at ICAO level, consistent with the No Country Left Behind program, which will enable us to customize each intervention required, we will not get the desired results. Through ICAO, we should conduct proper needs assessments before we embark on capacity building initiatives, and from that, establish the best vehicle to address the needs. Secondly, facilitate implementation of capacity building initiatives. As coordinated by ICAO and in collaboration with donor states or independent donors, we need to implement specific and target capacity building initiatives. Thirdly, it's evaluation. Once the implementation is done, we should do a thorough evaluation to determine whether indeed we really achieve the desired results. If not, then we should ask the question, why? And thereafter determine what should be done next. Lastly, the state receiving capacity building assistance should resolve to maintain the standards set arising from the assistance mission. This, colleagues, I believe, talks to the development of an international aviation security building framework as called upon by the United Nations, and for this, we are looking upon ICAO for guidance and direction. So what are the key steps that will help boost capacity building? First of all, capacity building, in my view, is twofold. First, we need to build internal or state capacity. This should, amongst others, focus on human resources capacity. We should not just be content with having warm bodies, but we must ensure that those tasked with looking after security in aviation are skilled and equipped. Secondly, capacity should also be bolstered and relevant in relation to existing circumstances and infrastructure. Someone once said, I suppose jokingly, that their home security is far more advanced than that of their local airport. Investment in technology is also of paramount importance. Technology is advancing, and we should ensure that capacity building is geared for the evolution in technology, as human factors and technology must strike a balance. Another facet of capacity building relates to state-to-state assistance. In a nutshell, I am proposing that we give more effect to the No Country Left Behind initiative. Regional forums should give impetus to the concept of continuous monitoring and rigorously foster the establishment of a peer review mechanism where states would be able to evaluate and assist each other in relation to complying with standards that are set by ICAO. In that way, Program Director, states would not have to wait for ICAO audits to discover their vulnerabilities threats and risks. Countries that are doing well in terms of ICAO's effective implementation ratings should commit to providing assistance to those that might be lagging behind in terms of compliance. Lastly, we need to engage the donor and private sectors to get the required financial and in-kind support. I must acknowledge that in some instances, business has assisted, but I believe that there is more that still needs to be done. Let me now touch on the factors that inhibit cooperation. I will use generic examples and terms to paint a picture. Firstly, there is somehow slow uptake and implementation of resolutions by countries. The UN Security Council and ICAO have taken a number of resolutions that emphasize the need for capacity building and cooperation. If each country was to move with the required speed to adopt and implement these resolutions and standards and recommended practices, we will not be having any of the concerns that we are currently fretting over. There could still be some denial mindset as a second point, where some states still believe that they are not on the target list of terrorists and therefore they are immune from terror attacks. Thirdly, there are sovereignty and jurisdiction barriers. There are lack of bilateral and multilateral agreements to a certain extent. There is also lack of trust, which is due to lack of capacity, where sometimes states are unsure what information can be shared with which state. Maybe in this regard, ladies and gentlemen, we should learn from terrorists themselves. They share information across borders. Information on how to perpetrate acts of terror is freely available on the web. Why can't we use the same approach? And I'm not suggesting that we make information freely available on the web, but we need to create structures or secure structures through which we can share information that can be used to protect aviation and, by extension, all of our citizens. Sharing of information could also prove to be cost-effective. If we were to do a survey, perhaps amongst all of us here in present, one would possibly find that a number of countries are conducting similar research initiatives with costs running into millions of dollars. But if there was a way to share the research we are doing individually, maybe there would be sufficient funds to conduct the all-comprehensive research we need, and thus be a step or maybe two ahead of the enemy. There are also internal complexities within states. My view is that various governmental agencies have a wider scope of information collection capabilities. Information about seemingly unrelated activities can be collected, analyzed, and investigated for possible trends. However, in the absence of internal cooperation as called for in the United Security Council Resolution 2309, information and the required action will fall in between the cracks. In some instances, there are too many state organs with varying legislations and systems. We therefore need to review legislation, procedures, and structures to improve cooperation and efficiency within our own states. Aviation security can never be a one-man show. Hence, we need to cooperate, collaborate, and build each other's capacity, starting at national level, and with the agencies we need to collaborate with through the regional and global level. There's also limited citizen participation. Terrorists do not operate out of Mars or Jupiter. Usually they find a cozy environment is in some country from where they organize themselves, recruit from within, and plan their attacks. In my view, we have not yet mobilized our citizens well enough for them to recognize the need to be alert and report those with ill intent. In some cases, citizens are not even aware of the need to report perceived threats. Moreover, citizens are unsure who to report to, and they are also not always confident that they will receive protection after blowing the whistle. Ladies and gentlemen, let us build a culture that is all-inclusive. We must collaborate with our communities to mine the intelligence required to deal with terrorist activities. In concluding, ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations security resolutions, as well as those of ICAO, have mapped the path that we need to follow. They have called upon all states to strengthen cooperation and collaboration and share experience with regards to development. They've called upon all states to engage in dialogue on aviation security and cooperate by sharing information to the extent possible about threats, risks, and vulnerabilities by collaborating on specific measures. And they've also called upon all states to develop an international aviation security capacity building framework. It is important to always remember that aviation security is our shared responsibility, and therefore we need to cooperate more in order to minimize risks, threats, and vulnerabilities. We are only as strong as our weakest link. Our collective and individual effectiveness is equal to information we have, because without information sharing, we all remain fragmented and disconnected. I will end my remarks by using an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, then go together. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Papi, for this very comprehensive presentation on capacity building and enhanced cooperation, and the emphasis on working together and cooperation.